Hello, darlings. You've all heard of Marilyn Monroe. Some of you know BRIDGET. Well, now it's time for the Cognac show. I said Cognac, ooh, ooh. I said Cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm your bubbly blonde, fabulously dressed.
I'm Cognac Wellerlane, and we are here at the second annual Climate Change Symposium, and I am here with Executive Director Frank Quevedo.
You say tomato, I say tomato. Right.
So tell me, darling, about this event this evening. Of course, this is a second annual event.
Correct.
Tell my audience a little bit more about what we hope to find out in this event this year.
Well, you know, our mission as an organization is to stimulate interest, advance knowledge, and give people the opportunity to understand our natural environment. And climate change is a real thing that's occurring in our world now, and I think we need to provide the programming necessary for people who are concerned about climate change issues to discuss it in a bipartisan way, and to have experts such as our panel speakers this evening to provide the education necessary for stewardship and to protect families and infrastructure, because someday there probably will be a hurricane or a drastic event that can,
it already has happened.
Right? So that has increased awareness, and we're just creating, a program for people to come and discuss it here at the Suffolk Natural History Museum.
Well, what can we do to prevent this? What can we do to change it? Is there any way we can change the climate? We really can't, can we?
No, I mean, all we can do is prepare for what's taking place now. Things have been happening in the environment that the wildlife has been telling us. There are animals that are bioindicators that express whether they show up or they don't show up is an indication that something's wrong with the environment. Fish in our oceans are not coming inshore as much as they were before because the ocean temperatures are increasing because of the warming of the earth. So all of these indications of wildlife that are not coming back and are moving further away offshore to cooler waters is an issue because there's a commercial fishing industry that relies on these stocks of fish to sustain their livelihood. But again, the most important thing is that we need to express and educate people how to have sustainable resources for our children and for generations to come.
What can we do?
Come to this event and learn.
And we're going to learn. Well, I'm going to also videotape with all these important scientists and politicians will be saying as well.
All of our panel speakers that have come to last year's symposium and are here this year are dedicated and committed to climate change and to seeing carbon emissions reduced, and they want to do everything possible, and they're committed to educating and doing everything possible for the sustainability of not just nature, but for our well-being, for human nature, and that's important.
And if we want to find out more information, if we want to learn about how we can participate and contribute and support this effort. Where can we go? What is the website?
You can visit our website at www.sofo.org, or you can come to the museum. We're open year-round, 362 days a year. We only close for a couple of major holidays. And most important is to visit our website and call us. If you have any questions, we're here and we're committed to our mission, and that's to connect people with nature and for them to better understand for stewardship purposes. Our number is 631-537-9735 if they want to call us.
Thank you, Frank, so much for talking and taking the time to tell us all about this wonderful organization and how we can learn more.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
And don't go away yet. We'll be back in a moment, darlings. More interviews coming up. Keep watching. Pink champagne kisses.
Terrible things that you read about or hear about are in fact related. The invasion of our pine forests here on Long Island by the southern pine beetle, the loss of the lobster industry migrating north, the frequency of extratropical storms and hurricanes that slam in, and not once every 100 years, but every other year. People drowning in their homes during storms in New York City. Huge washouts due to extraordinary rain events in central New York. And on and on. And these are all related. They're all consequences of climate change. Warming of our waters, acidification of our marine waters, the invasion with Lone Star ticks and pine beetles from the south, all of these and the storm events from an extra warm, overheated ocean are related. What to do about it? Governor Cuomo last year met at Columbia University with Al Gore. I was privileged to be there. I think others were there. And he made a commitment to begin to put policies into place. So our bill builds on and begins really with some of the initiatives that Governor Cuomo has advanced. We wish to codify those ambitious goals, because you never know, the governor could become a vice president or something. Such things are known to happen. So part of what our Assembly climate change bill is intended to do is to codify initiatives that the governor has already started.
To come up with a climate agreement that would actually work for more than 25 years. In 1992, there was a big conference in Rio that led to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It was supported by the first President Bush and unanimously affirmed by the US Senate, setting the objective of preventing dangerous climate change. But it didn't say how to do that. That was left to the Kyoto Protocol of 1997. but the US never signed on to that because it did not require China and India and the other developing countries to reduce their emissions. The Kyoto Protocol was expiring. There was an effort to come up with a new agreement in Copenhagen in 2009. That failed. The Paris conference that took place in December turned out to be a great success in many ways. There were about 190 countries that were present, and all of them agreed to this new framework for how to deal with climate change. The essence of the framework is that every country came up with its own voluntary, non-binding pledges for what it would do. Not only the developed countries like the US and Europe and Japan, but also the developing countries. There were two unfortunate aspects of that. One is the agreements are not at all binding or enforceable. They're purely voluntary pledges. And secondly, they don't add up to nearly enough. If all these countries did carry out their non-binding pledges, it would still yield a world with tremendous levels of sea level rise, of desertification, and species loss, and other kinds of negative effects. So everyone in Paris recognized that, and they agreed every 5 years to come back and do better.
A caveat and an apology. Caveat, I have hopped around the different sectors, so a jack of all trades and master of none. There it is, it's on now. So private sector and NGO work, I've worked with Richard Branson and a few others on climate change with the Carbon War, looking at economic solutions to climate change, which I think is the way through on much of this. And government work worked in the UK, in the Department of Energy and Climate Change, but also the local town of Westport, Connecticut, and the Mayor's Green Task Force there. And on the academic side, I'm a one-day-a-week executive fellow at the Yale Center of Business for the Environment. So I have got no expertise on any of them, just surf across the top. My apology is I'm going to speak at speed in bullet points in a strange Scottish accent. So I think the update since last year, because I think, how many of you were here last year talking about climate change? So great, more than half, excellent. This is an update. So the update is split into two, and it's got 6 Ps for you all to remember. So the update is massive increase in understanding and a massive increase in stepping up to action. The first 3 Ps under understanding, planetary boundaries. In our understanding, there's an immense step forward in the last year on the science. Not only realizing that climate change is caused by carbon dioxide, etc., but Johan Rockström, one to Google and watch a great TED Talk if you can, on the planetary boundaries. The idea that the world is a network of systems, and we are stressing that system, and we are moving from what's called the Holocene, this area of stable temperatures over the last few thousand years when we invented farming and started to settle down, through to the Anthropocene, basically the age when we are effectively a big world on a small planet instead of a small world on a big planet. So we've changed on that, and the understanding on that has increased. Here's one paper, which is, I think it's Stefan et al., is number 50 in the all-time sort of top 100 cited papers around the internet right now. So this is a huge sort of step forward. Second one, the pretense is over. I think there's probably one political party in the whole world, and you know where it is, and you know which half of the political spectrum it is, that's still arguing about this stuff. The pretense is over. The Flat Earth Society membership has gone down. And in fact, due to Andy Sabin and many others' efforts like him, I think even there in the Republican Party, there's more and more people just stepping forward and thinking about the solutions rather than thinking about whether it's happening or not. Which actually links to a great study, again, just going to throw out some references to the extent you're interested. New Climate Economy did a great report saying 96% of the things we need to do to avert dangerous climate change grow the economy at the same time. So really, we should be arguing with the non-believers about 4% of what we need to do and actually get cracking on the 96. The third P is, on the understanding side, is that problems enlarged as a system. Stephen Engelbrecht just spoke very eloquently about the loss of species, the human impacts. At a global level, 26 million people per annum are getting forced migration due to climate in the last, since 2008, versus 6 million due to conflict. And actually, these are not mutually exclusive sets anyway, because much conflict is going to be and has been created by climate stresses as well. Is going to be and has been created by climate stresses as well. So Davos and the World Economic Forum, they released a report saying, sort of that actually all these risks are interconnected. But the good thing is, actually the solutions are also interconnected as well. By moving to clean energy, we address so many things at the same time. We address health impacts, we reduce pollution, we make this place a better place to be at the same time as helped biodiversity and clean up.
The U.S. has slipped. We're at number 12. Standard of living is related to housing and happiness. The Nordic countries share some interesting concepts: co-housing, sharing of wealth and knowledge, not getting yourselves too in debt, and living where you need to live. In other words, what percentage of one's resources give into our house? Is it allowing ourselves to have enough to live? And by living, I mean, why are we happy? What do we do in our lives that make ourselves happy? It's the time that we spend doing the things that we believe in, and the times that we have in dreaming of those things that we wish to do. Do we live too far from where we work? My brother commutes to New Jersey. His family's in Baltimore. The same brother spent years in Mali. He was in the Peace Corps. He grew his hair long and made drums. He headed a few bands, and somehow he ended up in the insurance industry in New Jersey. I'm not sure how that happens. During the time I visited him in Mali, I remarked on the tribes and the mud huts that they built. We are in the Bandiagar Escarpment. That's the cliff dwellings that were so eloquently managed and handled by the inhabitants on a daily level based on their scale. In other words, when they had a child, they built a little more mud. And when someone died, they might remove it. And that's a sensibility that I think we've lost. How does the co-housing of the Nordic cultures, how do the bikes they use as the principal mode of transport raise their happiness level? How do we fight suburban sprawl? For us, it's the value of adaptive sharing culture. Do you really need 6 dishwashers in a house? I'm not sure, but I've been asked that question.
One that's really active, one that's free, and one that's very available to you. And if you don't happen to have a piece of land, why not ask every time you enter a piece of land if that land is being managed without toxins? Is it safe? Is it safe for your pets? Is it safe for your children? Landscape toxins are now known to cause a lot to cancer, autism, asthma, endocrine disruption, nervous system disorders, kidney failure, and the list is constantly growing. It's a very difficult thing to trace. People are not necessarily exposed to landscape toxins in a way that is obvious, but in the golf course industry, which is a career that most people stay with, it's traceable. People in golf course managers have twice the rate of leukemia and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as the rest of the male population. That is a telling thing. That's a very big statistic. So we have created the Perfect Earth Project and what we call perfect management. What is it? It is not a product. There's nothing to buy. It's a process. It involves proper watering, proper mowing, and proper management. It's quite simple. It engages the person in the process. So every person who owns the land and every person who works for them is engaged in a living process in keeping that property healthy and creating a complete change. So you're promoting the health of not just yourself, your environment, the pollinators, the water quality, and you're promoting diversity. So these are all things that are connected in terms of climate change, not always visibly, so people think, oh, that's nice, you're talking about lawns.
What I'd like to do is kind of talk real quickly about 3 programs and sort of what's driving us. Over my right shoulder, there's a chart you probably can see. On the south, and this is specific to the South Fork. On the South Fork, we have tremendous growth, as you know. We have a lot of building density. People, some people are not so happy about that. But our energy needs are increasing rapidly, and that's pretty much a linear expression over time. Over the next 15 years, that's what you're looking at in those vertical bars is the gap between demand and supply. Next year, it's 8 megawatts, and it goes up to 170 megawatts by 2030. So what can you do about that, and what does it mean to you? Well, the top chart, again, you don't really need to see the detail, but if you notice the curve, well, we pretty much, from January through June, and then from October through December, we utilize, like in Southampton, there are 20,000 households, and we utilize about 55 megawatts of power. Over the summer, our population triples from Thursday to Sunday. And so our energy goes up, our energy requirements go up from 55 to 95 megawatts. And the reason why I'm dragging you through all these numbers is the key thing is the summer peak. Everybody hears about this. These are the hottest days of summer. Well, again, back to the chart in Southampton, it was over 6 days and 16 hours that average 55 megawatts that we use went up to 140. And the reason why you care about that is because the power that we need, that they have to have on hand all year round, that we're all paying for in our bills, and have on hand all year round, that we're all paying for in our bills, and why our PSEG, our rates are so high, is that's the amount of capacity that they have to have on hand to serve our needs, plus another 7% for contingency purposes. So what we're focused on with the Energy Sustainability Committee is doing outreach to communicate this, to educate people, and then to tell them what it is that you can do to address that. Because if we could shave those peaks off, that would bring down the cost of electricity for everyone.
Welcome back, darlings. I'm Cognac Wellerlane, and we are here at the second annual Climate Change Symposium. And I'm here with Mr. Stephen ENGLEBRIGHT, New York State Assembly member, and he is a big influence on this event tonight. Tell my audience why, of course, you spoke very eloquently all evening, but right to your gut, why are you such a big supporter of this event? Tell my audience.
I believe that the South Fork Natural History Museum is providing an enormous public service by organizing this event as a forum to dare to talk about beginning with the implications of the impact upon the natural world. The main theme of what this institution is about is preserving the rare animals and plants that grace our region and our biosphere. And then the implications in the larger sense of climate change impacting not just those animals, but all of the living creatures on Earth, including our species, and the relationship between humans and the natural world is clearly infused through all of the discussions that you heard here, talking about the impact of global greenhouse gas impacting the very climate of Earth and threatening to alter not just the habitats of plants and animals, but our ability to live on this planet as human beings.
There's so many different things that we need to address. I mean, even the way we live and how we build our homes. And they were touching on the subject that the seawater will be rising. Do you believe that all houses should be uplifted, not just the ones on the coast, but all homes should be elevated when being built?
No. A home that is, with good elevation above sea level is not at risk.
It's only only homes that are being built on the coast.
Only those that are near sea level are near that.
Are at risk, really.
Are at risk from extratropical storms and flooding events.
you're correct to ask that question, though, because
Yeah, because I live in an area, I live actually in Lido Beach, and
Okay.
I was very, very lucky because when Sandy's hit us,
yes,
my house was sort of elevated right, because we live right on the boulevard. It was a little bit more elevated, so we didn't get any water in our houses. But the people that were right by the ocean, I mean, the water went all the way up to, I would say up to here, waistline, which is pretty scary.
yes. The storm surge from Superstorm Sandy was dramatic, and the storm stalled on our coastline for two full tidal cycles. So the flooding event that occurred was caused in part by just the storm's own pushing of water toward the shore, plus the normal tidal cycle being superimposed upon that phenomenon twice while the storms just sat there. So it was a devastating storm, especially for southern Nassau County and parts of Staten Island and Manhattan. We had a real wake-up call.
Because no one thought that would ever happen.
We tend to
Just take it for granted. That
to take it for granted, exactly right. And yet, we saw one of the, for the second time in about 10 years, we saw New Orleans and now New York, two of our greatest American cities, subjected to punishing impacts from storms that are not supposed to happen except once maybe every 100 or 200 years. The frequency of storms, as we heard in this symposium today, and the panelists were really quite brilliant. This museum has really, I think, performed a wonderful public service by bringing these scientific and
bringing
programmatic minds
bringing awareness to people
to
make
educate.
yes, that's why you're here. That's why the panel is here, to bring awareness, to make people understand that the world is changing and we need to adapt to the way the world is changing, and maybe to prevent things, excessive energy that doesn't need to be done. You know, I mean, maybe we can live within, modifying that. And that's why you're here, to educate us. Tell my audience, where can we go to learn more information? What is the website? Where can we go to learn more about, sustainable energy and this particular museum? Do you know what the website is? Can you help us with that?
I don't remember the website off the top of my head, but you can find your way to the South Fork Natural History Museum rather easily, and the education department of this museum will point you in the direction of resources that are relevant to this topic.
Thank you so much for that wonderful interview. Thank you so much.
My honor to be here.
Don't go away yet. We'll be back in a moment, darlings. More interviews coming up. Keep watching. Big champagne kisses.
Hello, darlings. You've all heard of Marilyn Monroe. Some of you know BRIDGET. Well, now it's time for the Cognac show. I said cognac, ooh, ooh. I said cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm your bubbly blonde, fabulously dressed to impress. One of a kind girl.